Hello everyone, I am Ketan Paithankar and I welcome you to another episode of Neural Networking with Konverge AI. We are glad to have Chandra Maddukuri, Senior Vice President of Revenue Management and Data Science at Extraspace Storage back with us following our previous conversation on AI in pricing science. In this episode, we will be discussing how organizations can build a data-driven culture and how leadership teams can enable better decision making through data. With more than 2 decades of experience leading analytics, revenue management, and data science initiatives across multiple business functions, Chandra has seen firsthand how organizations have evolved in their approach to data, decision making, and enterprise transformation. Chandra, it's great to have you back with us today. Hey, hi Chandra. So I think this theme that we're gonna talk about today is very near and dear to my heart. That is building a data-driven culture across the enterprise. So it seems very easy, but it's a difficult job to actually do it and build the culture across all levels, across all the business functions, across all the practices that is across the enterprise. And we know that you have been doing it day in day out, so we thought that why don't we discuss it and hear it from the horse's mouth. So my first question to you is, from a leadership perspective, what defines a data driven culture within an organization beyond simply having access to dashboards and reports?
Yeah, I think I'm happy to talk about this too. I think this is an important topic, and for I'm assuming that a lot of analysts or data scientists or leaders of data teams, they are the ones who will listen to this podcast. And I wish someone has actually told me earlier in my career why this is such a crucial thing, data-driven culture. And I think it's taken me some time to appropriately understand the importance of it. I think to understand the importance of it, you have to really understand, okay, what does success mean as data professionals, as data leaders, as data scientists or analysts? What does success mean? Ultimately, success comes if you have within organizations uh, data informing key decisions, data informing how to solve problems, and all of these decisions leading to better customer experience, better products that we give, better outcome for your shareholders. If data is playing an enabling role to do all of that, then I think you are successful. Ultimately, that's your mission. Data being able to do all of that. Now, for the organization to achieve to do all of that, I know platforms play an important role. You people having access to data plays an important role. Awesome machine learning models play an important role. So those are all are important. But I think culture, I think, is central, is more crucial than all the other things.
Right.
And and the key message that I want to give is uh, culture is important, and as leaders or as analysts, you have agency. You have agency to actually impact the culture, and I think that is something, a realization I want you to take. I think it is important to think about. You have to develop some skills. You have to change. You have to change your thinking mindset. Pick up some skills to be able to do that effectively. But I think you have to start believing that you can.
Right. I think you hit a right note there when you said that decision making and enabling people to take the right decisions based on all the techniques which are available at hand is the way to go. But the next question, which is a follow up on this that I have for you, is how can organization embed this data driven culture into everyday decision making and leadership practices or cross functional teams?
Right. So, you know, um, the thing in terms of it is like we know because we have talked about data culture being somewhat important. Now, how would you sort of describe it, right? In terms of um, describing it is kind of hard in some sense, right? But it's something like one of the Supreme Court justices in the US said, I know it when I see it. Like he was using that to describe a different thing. Uh, but if you, so what are the telltale signs? I feel like if the organizations have this culture or not, I think this will help us say where there are gaps and where we need to work on. For anything that needs improvement, right? If you are looking to hire talent, or if you are looking to buy properties, whatever the activity that a business team or business leader is focused on, they or those teams should have a passion to excel at it, to do that well. And it's important to actually, if you have passion for it, it makes sense that you actually start measuring it. If you don't measure it, you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, you don't have a sense for how to improve, right? And that is where a lot of reporting and analytics or data comes in, just to measure where you are. And if you are a data leader and reporting and you're not getting much questions on measurement or what is the best KPI, how do I optimize, then that is a sign that maybe the organization is where it needs to be, right?
Right.
And you also have cases where there are strategic decisions that are made, and the worst scenario is there is no data at all that is taken as an input. So you can have organizations like that. There are organizations like that where important strategic decisions are made with absolutely zero data input. Or this is slightly better where you come in, but you're asked at the very last minute. Okay, we have to make this decision today. What does the data tell us? Which is actually better, right? You can provide some information, but the ideal state is to be at a state where you are brought in a bit early. You are a partner, and you actually are part of the journey in making a decision. And then you can shape the KPIs. Maybe you can identify what data is needed. You should start collecting data. Maybe you can recommend an A/B test. Whatever the right tool is to help guide the organization to make the right decision, you make it. And I think a lot of this culture setting around data comes from executives.
Right.
And they are the ones who essentially, you can look at an organization, how does an executive make a decision? How are they making key decisions? And you can get a pretty good sense for the culture in the organization. Yeah.
Right, right. When the organizations they start measuring, so there is somewhere they need to start. Maybe some organizations are at higher maturity and comfort level, and some organizations are somewhere in between, starting their journey about data culture. So when you are building a data culture across an enterprise, how do you approach the challenge of teams operating at very different levels of data maturity and comfort?
Yeah. Great question. I don't see different teams operating at different data maturity a problem per se. Different teams have different needs. They are there to fulfill different functions. Some teams are more on the execution focus. Some teams more have the strategic focus. And depending on the needs of the team, it is understandable if some teams have different levels of maturity. And if that is the case, you have to identify that, you have to map that, understand what are the different levels of data maturity and data needs within the organization, and create your data strategy based on these different levels of maturity. Now, some teams are on the lower end of the data maturity, for those teams, then when you have to create reporting and you have to use maybe even just tier one data to avoid any sorts of confusion to provide high levels of trust. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe there are individuals and teams who need hundreds of reports, track lots of metrics, and even need the help of predictive modeling, even need to have the ability to question data using natural language so they can drill and dig as much as they choose and please to get to the decision that they want to get to. So you have to create your strategy, your data and analytics strategy in tandem with the data maturity within the organization. But I do want to make, tying it back to culture, I do want to make one comment here. Now, it is possible that certain organizations might benefit from a high level of data maturity, but the business leaders or leader within the organization doesn't get it. Right? They are not there at the right level. And that becomes harder for us to work in terms of they can use all of these capabilities to actually make an impact on their business. And the business leaders may not be receptive in those cases. And that is something that at the end of the day, you have to think again of your mission. Your mission is for that team to succeed by using better data-driven decisions, by improving the decision-making process. And now you are ultimately able to get to your mission only if you make a change in some capacity to that to the leadership. Now the change can come by sometimes you can train those individuals. You can get them to understand. Okay, maybe you can. They can get better. So this what the individuals obviously can change. Sometimes you provide feedback saying, hey, this is important. You need to work on this. And sometimes you have to maybe talk to their managers potentially to see if there's a need to make a change there. And sometimes you have to work with maybe other leaders within that division or department who are more capable so that better decisions get made and a strategy gets defined and what is appropriate. So the answer may not be one, but what the one ticket that I want to use when there are such gap between department, what is the optimal data maturity, and where they are operating at. When there are those gaps, and sometimes those gaps could be filled by analytical tools and better platforms, better systems. Sometimes it needs to be built. It needs to be changed on the leadership side. So when you are thinking about, I mean that when again, I mean culture becomes such an important piece, and soft skills become such an important piece because as data leaders, we think only about the hard stuff of our platforms. I mean, those are the things where our minds are usually focused on. But if you sit back, all of these other things are just as are even more important than all of the other things that we focus on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, I mean the point you said about the soft skills, right? So I feel that whenever we are talking about data teams, so we are talking about math skills, programming skills, communication skills, and stakeholder management skills because they need to talk to also different business functions and then they help shape the decisions. So my follow-up question on that is what role should data teams play in shaping decisions so that they have better influence? Because if they are not having the influence working with the teams, then probably the maturity and comfort in the culture is not something up to the mark that you want to achieve. So while they are doing it, while still ensuring that business leaders they remain accountable for outcomes. So how do we do this intersection of the influence of the shaping of decisions by the data team and the business leaders remaining accountable for outcomes?
Yeah. So, so at the end of the day, especially if you're leading a data team, you're a data scientist or data analyst. you are in the position of usually you recommend something, you recommend a change based on the insight out of data. Ultimately, the business leader is the one who makes the decision. And I think that's appropriate for the, that's how it has to be. That individual is responsible for taking a 360 view, considering all aspects on making what is the right for the organization, uh, which is good. But in terms of how you can be effective in the process to influence a decision, I think the key word I would say is partnership. You have to partner, and you have to work with the business leaders to understand, okay, what are the key problems that they are going to solve? What is it in their mind? What is it that's keeping them awake? What are the problems that if you put energy and effort towards, that will have a big impact on their business? And having building these deep partnerships will also allow you to understand, okay, what are the which business teams should I focus more on? It is not every team is equal in terms of the opportunity there is in terms of providing insight that actually produces great outcomes for the business. And if you do all of this effectively, what happens is, even though when you work with them and when you create some insights, when you do some reporting, when you do some analysis, you are able to cast these insights in a way that they understand, in a way that they can easily consume. And if you if you do those things well, you will actually find wins that then you can then communicate more broadly. And if you do that, there is a snowball effect where you would attract, organically attract other business leaders coming to you, working with you, talking to you on what the problem that they are trying to solve. Now, then you are more strategically integrated in their decision making process. You can start influencing the KPIs. You can start influencing what they may, if you want to design a test, you can help them design a test. You can help them gather the appropriate data. So you, I mean, you, so you are in a way integrated into their decision making process, and they treat you as partners. I think it's important to also have the mindset is that the success of your business team that you're working with, their success is your success, essentially. If they are successful, ultimately you're successful. And sometimes if you're too passionate about the relation, I'm not getting the credit or those kinds of things, it can actually backfire on you. So I think, do everything well. I think you will have, if you have the right impact on the organization, ultimately good things happen to your career as well.
Right, where I think that was very well put. So, coming to the theme of AI, which is really picking up on an even on an adoption level now with the enterprises, and all enterprises are looking to make it central to their business, that how they can leverage AI and identify the use cases, correctly apply it, and gain an advantage. So, with AI now becoming central to any kind of business conversations, how do you see it changing the expectations from data and the way organizations think about being data driven? How is the thought process that you are observing changing with AI being talked about in enterprises?
Yeah, you know, at this point, I would say no one is an expert in the AI. I am neither. I am also. I wouldn't call it me an expert. All of us are learning and trying to navigate this space and how to try to see how AI is going to impact our areas of the business, and in our cases, how data uh, influences enterprises as a whole in the context of AI. But I think it is, we are already seeing it's having a substantial impact already. So first, I mean, just focusing on just the data teams themselves, I think we have to, at least if you're leaders of data teams and if you're uh, uh, individual contributor in the space, in either case, we have to challenge ourselves and our teams to be more productive. I think that's number one, and I'm seeing a lot of that already happening within my teams, where the usage of AI functionalities, whether to improve, whether to make it easy to query data, create pipelines, or write code, all of that has really improved. I mean, it's really accelerated the speed at which we can deliver, and our teams have to take advantage of that. And what I'm seeing also, and this is where I think how we hire and train employees is going to be more crucial. What I'm seeing is the individuals who are already high potential or more impactful people, they're being even more impactful. Meaning they now you can see those individuals. Let's say you're a data scientist, because the AI tools are helping you. You can do data engineering stuff. You can do machine learning stuff. You can do you can so you it actually expanded and empowering individuals. I'm seeing that happen within my teams, and I think the smarter folks are taking more advantage of that. They're just getting better faster. And so that is just within the data teams, our teams, right? But if you look at broadly within the enterprise, I at least I see two trends. One is there are some frontline roles where in the past we focused on providing them with a lot of data, and we used to have put a lot of time and energy to train those individuals on these reports. And we're actively thinking about why can't AI deliver the insight for them? Why don't they have to actually scrub through a lot of data to actually see what is important for them to act on? Why can't we just list of things that they need to focus on? And so that is a trend where we are seeing where if we go that route, there's potential for the data savviness of for that group of employees. They don't have to be as data savvy. They need to now execute, and we can when we hire and train them, we can focus on more of those execution functionalities. And there is also other end of the spectrum where we are seeing opportunities where previously they are not able to, some business leaders, they are not able to get to the depth of data that that they need to
Looking
get
at.
to make a decision. And now LLMs and the ability for them to query data beyond reporting. They cannot write SQL queries, but they can describe them in terms of natural language
Right.
and communicate what they want. And now there are actually a subset of individuals whom we need to provide more data, empower them more. So I'm seeing both of these trends happening.
Right. And just to add to this as a sub follow up question, so how are you also governing the cost aspects of implementing AI? Is there anything you are consciously monitoring about?
So cost aspect, so far, I haven't focused as much on cost, and the costs are running up. I'm seeing that. At some point, we have to actively monitor it. We have agreed on some caps, budget caps. At this point, at least within our teams, the focus has been okay. Let's use these tools, understand them. Let's try to be more productive, and we'll come back to optimizing costs. And that's a point of concern, because at this point, there is a fair amount of a lot of these companies are not making actual revenue. They are being driven out of investor money, angel investor money, or whatever. So the cost might actually increase. And I'm confident that we will be able to find a good path to optimize cost. At some point, it's going to be a problem. At this point, that is not a major area of focus.
Right. And what about the security aspect? Especially when you have code which is getting created by AI, or the LLMs having access to the data.
Yeah. Governance is a challenge with all of the data tools. So what we have done at least is we have created enterprise versions of the tools wherever possible, where data is within the boundaries of the enterprise. At least that is what the major companies claim anyway. And we have gone that route. We are looking to minimize as much as possible. We are trying to, throughout the organizations, we are identifying the optimal tools for every department, and trying to formalize what tools people need to use, and also create, make sure that they are using the business enterprise versions where there is governance of data and tools that way. Right now, there are individuals who are just using tools that are even outside of the business licenses. That is happening within the organization, which is not where we want to be and where we need to be, and we need to change that. So once we have clarity on have a definition of the department tools, we will go to the next step. The next steps might be we'll add some restrictions,
Right.
some boundaries on what people can use and people cannot.
Right. So I think most of the enterprises, the governance aspect is catching up now, because we probably are in that second or third phase after people exploring the tools and getting to know what business use cases they can do and they cannot do.
Yeah.
So coming to now, as you said that the data foundations is something important, on top of which you will apply the AI. So in your view, are organizations strengthening their data foundations because of AI, or they are trying to move faster than their data is ready for? Like some of the examples you gave, that in natural languages people are able to interact with the data. So one of the things we are also observing is, let's say that if you are a retail customer and you know that you have lots of data you are collecting day by day, but probably earlier used to be BI reporting or reports for a very limited subset of people who used to look at, let's say for a chocolate, how much was the sale in a particular region. But then there is an 80% data which is still there, which is not being used. So now
Yeah.
we may have an area sales manager somewhere sitting asking a question that in the person's area, what was the sell. The data was getting collected, but now the person, instead of the Excel sheets, gets a direct answer via the questions, via the system, via the LLMs. So how about this aspects of strengthening the data foundations because of AI?
Yeah, I think organizations have to do both. It means like we have to adopt quickly, we have to run fast, and we have to get the benefits as quickly as possible. And we also have to make sure that that we when we provide data, when we provide insights, they're of high quality. And we also have to maintain data governance. We don't want to put data in the wrong hands. So all of these need to happen, and these goals are not always aligned. There is conflict and there is tension, and the tension is real. And the tension, I can see that within my organization as well. And I think it is good, in fact, and appropriate for the organizations to have some tension like that. And Now, uh, I would say the solution is to do both. Meaning, let's say we, organizations have massive amounts of data, and it's not. It's actually going to be not judicious for us to make sure that all data has an exceptional semantic layer, and it has to be in the optimal cloud thing possible for us to, before we actually do anything with it. I think that I don't think that's how the organizations benefit. We have to have actually produce tangible benefits to the organization in parallel. And I understand the risks. So we had to find a way to mitigate the risk and produce benefit. Maybe the solution is to identify teams, more strategic teams that are smaller in size, where we can clearly work with them, communicate the limitations, identify opportunities, and provide them with tools so they can work with and they can provide feedback, we can improve before we scale to other broader teams that have lots of employees. So I think that's one way of looking at it. We have to start somewhere, improve that piece of data, bring it to the right level of quality, and provide the right level of semantics and context to AI. And what that does hopefully is, once though that business leaders or they see a win that excites, and if that produces good business outcomes, then that creates momentum. Even that momentum is helpful if you have to then make a case for, okay, that data we provided because that did not need a big infrastructure push, but for to satisfy the needs of all these other teams, that's not enough. We have to take a broader swipe at it, and that needs a investment in infrastructure, and that could actually help create value. And actually, although at beginning these seem to be in loggerheads with each other, I think we should be able to find a way that uh, producing some value can help snowball to actually also improve the infrastructure.
Right, right. I also want to ask that how much effort it also is from a data strengthening point of view, where you need to make the data ready so to be used with a LLM model or an AI model.
So, so that is something that we are, in terms of how much effort is needed for data to be ready. I think it depends on it depends on a lot of factors. For relatively small teams, for example, we have a marketing team that has maybe 20 employees, 25 employees, and we have given them tools where they can use natural language to get to do all kinds of, to understand how traffic is coming, how a website is performing. And they have had a fair amount of success using the tool to actually get immediate insights. But not everyone is comfortable to be able to do that. I would say it is what we have done is, we have put a lot of energy towards giving AI the right prompt and context so it can actually do a pretty good job. And we have data scientists actively monitoring how the users are using it, and based on that, they're actually modifying the prompts that we are giving, and also communicating to the business teams on what not to do, creating like a best practices. So we are also starting to add a semantic layer on the data. We are hoping that that will improve the LLM even further. So I we are we are figuring out at this point in terms of how the effort. I don't have. I think there is some experimentation that needs to be done, and all of us need to do that to
Right.
figure out what. And the answer on what's the right level, it depends on the amount of trust, the quality of the end user. If the end user is already analytically driven, and they can actually look at a query and say, okay, this doesn't make any sense, then it is a different level of effort. If on the other hand, if you have to provide these tools for someone who is not data savvy, you have to question whether you actually need to. I mean, should give such advanced tools to them. It actually, I think, is going to create more challenges than actually values it drives. So there are lots of judgment calls that we need to do in this space.
Right. I think that's a very good way to put it, because we see that the organizations still are trying to figure out from an adoption standpoint that how much effort needs to be there, and there are many factors associated to it, be it trusting the tool, or like right you said that whether it's a correct persona from a business point of view to give them access to the advanced ones, or probably for them to begin with, reporting is a good way to do, because ultimately it's about taking the decisions and enabling them to take the right decisions or for the business calls. Now we are also observing that enterprises are starting to delve into agentic systems, and as we move towards more autonomous and agent like systems that can independently, with some direction, act on data, how do you see the balance between human judgment and systems led decisions evolving over the next few years?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we will have more AI systems, right? That is a given. We will have more AI based judgment. We're already seeing that happening in the call centers. I mean, lots of places already, and that's only going to accelerate. I think data teams have an important role to play in this space overall. So at the end of the day, these are systems that are making decisions, that are using judgment to do so. And data teams have to figure out how to measure that, meaning that there are good decisions and bad decisions. There are good judgments and bad judgments. Is AI doing the right judgment? Is AI satisfying all of the needs? And that measurement is actually not that straightforward. How do you measure an AI system? I mean, sometimes it is outcomes based measurement is easy when it is possible. If it is a sales agent, is it getting the right conversion? So that measurement is somewhat straightforward. Okay, you can say that. But even internally, if it's not doing well, then what aspect of it that is causing it to underperform? And again, that comes to measuring several aspects, several dimensions of this system. And you have to, I mean, if you think about measurement and is critical to what our teams do, then I think that is an important aspect. And also, once you, okay, that's a weak aspect of the system. If you identify that, or let's say the system is not doing poorly, now the question becomes, okay, how can you improve it? How can you get the system to do better in that dimension? And then it's again an important thing with the data teams where you have to figure out, okay, should you change the prompt, or maybe there's a new data that needs to be fed in that the system doesn't know about. So again, I would say in that whole loop about measurement, identifying opportunities, finding ways to improve, data teams have to play a significant roles within organizations. And I see that overall as an opportunity for our community.
Right, right. That's, I think, also something that I'm also observing. My couple of last questions. So, my first last question to you is from a data driven culture point of view. So, you will observe that the structure for the data teams in organizations is always one is where you have a data mesh structure where people would work. You would have data people working in each of the business units or the business teams, and you would have siloed access to the data. Like if you have a sales function, then you would have a mesh for the sales function, or you would have a mesh for the marketing function, and some other supply chain function. And the other structure is where you bring all data at one place, which is more a centralized structure, where you bring the data, you build a warehouse, or you build a lake house where you bring all the data in, and then you would go out and start solving the use cases. But the data team is central, and you would then gather probably the requests from the business functions and start working with some kind of a prioritization. So what have you observed, or what have you learned, that is there something that for some business for domains, like for example in healthcare, probably the centralized one would work, or the mesh works better, or is it like that? So what have been your observations?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there is no perfect answer here. Now, each one has their strengths, right? So you have, let's say, you have a data scientist reporting into a business unit, and the strength there is that automatically provides great partnership with that business unit. You breathe that business day in and day out. You know the metrics, you know the KPIs, you know how those people talk. All of that should help shape the decisions within that business. Partnership is usually strong. So what is the strength of the on the other side when you have a centralized team? The centralized team, you have a holistic view of the business. You can look at business teams, marketing teams. You have, and you could be more also business agnostic, meaning you're a bit more objective. Sometimes the decisions have to go beyond a particular business unit, and in terms of making a more holistic changes to actually produce outcomes. And you are in the right position to do so. You're not tied to a business, and people don't see you as part of that business, and that is where you're coming from. You're not coming from that aspect of it. So there is strength, and I think they there is also with the centralized unit learning from other data scientists. I think there is more of a chance for you to learn, develop best practices, and improve as a group. Um, so now, um, whichever structure you are in, you have to take advantage of your strength and understand your weakness, find a way to be effective in the weakness. I think so. When you are, let's say, connected to a business unit, then you have to find a way to have dotted lines with other analysts within the group, and within other parts of the organization, and maybe have a community, or so a committee or something along those lines, which is more softer, but it'll help exchange notes, help learn from each other. On the If you are more on the centralized, I think the challenge that you have is on the partnership side. You don't know any business per se. It's harder for you to influence, and there's a lot more energy that needs to be expended to make sure that those partnerships are developed with the business users. So ultimately, you cannot influence until you partner.
Right, right. I think that's a great way to put that no answer is perfect, and you need to find out the strengths where you stand, and then take a path from there and measure it. Now, my next.
I think you can be successful in either.
Yes, yes,
Either environments, you have agency. Ultimately, you have to think about your mission,
yes.
what your mission is, and you can be successful in either. And you can, if you are actively working with focusing on that mission. I think these other things about creating the right connections and networks will happen
Really want to.
organically.
Yes, yes. Because I feel that why this question is also important is I feel that if whenever we are working on data, I feel that data is equal to some kind of multiplication of people and business processes. So the people are crux of it. So if the more you interact with the business unit, the more you uncover that how you can, as a data scientist, contribute to building those pipelines to help them make the decisions, the right decisions faster, which can have the impact right away, which can be seen across the organization. And the best way to maybe start is with the business units, as per the strength, talking to them. But then you start realizing that maybe you are able to correlate the data across the org, from the supply chain to the sales forecasting side of things. So then that's how the culture you are trying to build across the time. Of course, it's a time process where you will not get maybe the results on day one, but then you start observing the results as you go, defining the culture for the organization.
Yeah, I think I do lean to more of a. I mean, if I have to, I mean, if I'm pushed, I would lean towards more centralized data organizations in the, and that puts a lot of thing on these data teams to partner with business teams, and that partnering is actually, as we talked about, because we come from more of the analytical math background, softer skills I wouldn't call as a typical strength for these teams. So, but I think if they can actually effectively do that, then I think that actually produces best outcomes for the organization.
Yes, I feel that something while choosing whichever one works as per the thing, but the points that they can consider, like thinking about which one to go for. So one is maybe the size of the organization, the business units that you are talking to, the starting maturity of the data for different departments, the digitization, or let's say the supporting software that you may, the maturity and the implementation of the software, like an ERP system or a CRM system, which is capturing the data out of the business process where it sits. And another factor they can look at also is how the current reporting structure for the organization is looking like, when they are how are the processes, because what is happening, I feel, is that when you consider all this, then you will realize that when you are trying to do AI, you may have to reimagine or re-engineer some of the processes also that are going to get affected. So these are three or four factors to look in when when you want to go into. Now, my last question to you is that, like you said, that soft skills may not be may not be an aspect when the data scientists are working upon, or the because of the background, the analytical and the math background. But how important is the domain knowledge for a data scientist? Because a lot of the data scientists, when they come in, they may not be having the right kind of domain knowledge, which can actually help them also proactively contribute to building the pipelines. So how do we enable the data scientists to quickly grasp the domains of the business? Let's say if they are working in supply chain, or they are working in for sales or marketing. So there is always this domain context which the data scientists need to learn about, and sometimes it is a complex process for them to understand the data and the processes as well. So as enablers, business enablers, or data leaders, or data team enablers, how do we make that process faster and easier for the data scientist?
Yeah, I think even during onboarding, you have to create steps so that they have to have domain understanding. It has to be a process since pretty much day one. and that can be done by what I mean. There are different options there. So you talked about supply chain. Now, one way to understand the supply chain is someone actually maybe needs to sit in the warehouse for a day.
Right.
So what's actually happening in the warehouse? And maybe they have to travel in the truck in the last mile to see the problems that the truck driver is facing.
Right.
So, and if you actually be on the ground, see with your eyes what's actually happening, that has a big impact in understanding what are the challenges, what are the problems. Now, when a business leader talks about a problem later on in a presentation in a meeting, you can tie back. You actually have seen
Yes,
it.
seen it.
Yeah, and I think that actually on the ground, find ways to put them on the ground, whatever that on the ground might be in the different areas that they are trying to work on. Work is actually key, and of course, having getting them to be part of some meetings, like let's say your supply chain teams, maybe introduce and be can I be a fly in the wall in that meeting? So to understand their KPIs, the things that matter to them, and being part of the onboarding process, I think that has helped in some cases. And also, I think the leaders of these analytical teams have to be business savvy. They have to understand. They have to have the domain knowledge, and they have to communicate that understanding. This is important. This is really important. You're only successful if you're good in this space.
Yes, definitely. I think that part is very much important where the analytical leaders have to be business savvy, because if they are not, then the culture will get shifted somewhere else, or the goals that you want to achieve may get lost in translation. So, thank you very much for today spending time and taking us through this journey of building a data-driven culture across the enterprise. I think if we have to take four or five key takeaways, one would be is that we really need to think beyond the dashboards and reports, but try to bring in that thinking about how the data is getting generated, what data is getting generated, why it is getting generated, and how it can best be used for the decision making. That is one. The second key takeaway that I see is that in order to embed that into the organization, the data teams have to talk to the business units, and they need to make best use of whatever the tools which are available to help the business leaders to take the best decisions, and that should be their goal. The third key takeaway that I took through this, and for the listeners, is that the data teams they have to really be business savvy, and they need to understand the domain and be there on the ground to see so to understand at what problem, so that they have more and more, if they have more and more contextual knowledge, then that is something which would help them to really build the pipelines and solve for the problems. The fourth one is that on the advent of AI, it is very important to understand what problems you are solving, and what access from a data standpoint and a tool standpoint, maybe an advanced tool may not be a good way to put it for the persona. So you really need to understand the personas, the business use cases, and then apply AI and bring it to output, and do that iterative process of measuring again and again. And that is important from a data culture standpoint as well, whenever you start somewhere, but then you need to continuously iterate, measure, see the weaknesses, find out the weaknesses, and then then work on those. And as we are moving into the agentic system, we really need to build that balance between the human judgment and whatever the system output that we are going to get. If I missed any, feel free to add as the last note.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I enjoyed having this conversation. I think I'm passionate about culture within organizations, and I hope the takeaway for our audience is that, hey, this is important, and you have agency. You can act on it. I would encourage you to work on your soft skills. They will be really handy as you go through this. And if you put energy and effort, good things will happen in terms of the impact that you have on the organization, and good things will happen with respect to your career.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chandra, for spending the Friday morning with us and talking about this.